Florida versus Utah. Doing a video, series of videos, biggest non-con games of 2022. I talked about Ohio State and Notre Dame yesterday. Click back one video if you haven't seen that one yet. And we're going to do something today and over the weekend. I don't do this very often. I do it a few times a year. But it's usually pretty fun when we do it. What I'm going to do is every time my most recent video hits however so many likes, I'm going to upload another video. And we'll keep it going as long as you guys keep hitting the thumbs up button. Now, I just checked yesterday's video, and it had, I think, 375 thumbs up. So that's where we'll start today for this one. As soon as this video gets 375 thumbs up, I'm going to do another one. And as far as which teams I talk about next time, which game, because this is going to be non-con matchups for this coming year, I'm going to go to the comment section of this video as soon as it hits 375 likes, and I'm going to find a game that somebody wants me to talk about, and I'm going to make a video and upload it. But let's talk about Florida and Utah today. Now, this game to me is interesting for several different reasons. The main reason, though, to me that this game is interesting has nothing to do with this year's game in 2022 and everything to do with next year's game in 2023. The game this year is in Gainesville. There's nothing all that remarkable about Florida playing a home game in Gainesville. That's where they play all their home games, right? Now, this is against a Pac-12 opponent. Florida hasn't played a Pac-12 opponent at home since the 80s, I believe, 1982, I think. BYU, what's the difference? BYU, Utah. Utah hasn't played an SEC team on the road since 1984. But, and while that may be interesting, none of that compares to what's happening next year, where Florida goes on the road to Utah to play. That's right, Florida making the trek. They're taking a mission trip to Salt Lake City next year to play Utah on the road. Why is that interesting? Well, you already know. Florida has not played a Power 5 non-conference opponent outside the state of Florida in a true road game since 1991. That's right, Florida has not played a road game against a non-conference Power 5 opponent in over 30 years. The last time they did it, on the road at Syracuse back in, I think it was 90 or 91, on the road at Syracuse, and, well, they lost. That's why they never do it. So next year's game will be even more interesting, but this year's game is interesting too. Florida hosting Utah week 1. Now, a couple of strange things about these two teams here. Utah has been the better team during the college football playoff era. If you go back and track from 2014 forward to now, Utah's got a better record. They got more conference championships. They got more everything, bowl win, you name it. Utah's been the better program during the college football era. Now, I will admit Utah does not play the level of competition year in and year out because during the Pac-12 that Florida does within the SEC, but still, I think a lot of people will be surprised to know that, we all know Florida was terrible last year, but, people just kind of have this general idea of Florida being a pretty good team. Utah's been a better team during the playoff era than Florida. Who's more talented of a team, Utah or Florida? Well, Utah's coming off a 10-3 season, right? Was it 10-3? I believe it was 10-3 after they lost. No, they played 14 games. They won the Pac-12, and then they lost in a bowl game to Ohio State. But they won the Pac-12. Miracle! Is that first time winning the Pac-12? They won the division a couple of times. Maybe the first time winning the Pac-12. Florida, of course, coming off one of its worst seasons in a while, 6-7. Cost a man his job, too. Clown Mullen no longer employed down in Gainesville by the University of Florida. So clearly Utah had a much better season last year than Florida. Was Utah more talented than Florida last season? No, they weren't, at least not according to the Team Talent Composite Index put together every year by the good people over at 24/7. They take a team's roster, they last 4 recruiting cycles, right? And they say, okay, this is how much talent is on this team. And they take into account transfers out, transfers in, juniors leaving early. So, it's not a perfect science, but it's probably the best thing out there when you're trying to find out how much talent is on a particular team. Would you be surprised to know that Florida had the 7th most talented roster in all of college football last year? That's right. And what did that 7th most talented roster get Dan Mullen, the clown, and his Florida Gators? Well, it got them a 6-7 season. Utah, in a sort of strange twist of fate, also had the 7th most talented roster in the Pac-12. Yeah, that's right. Utah had the 7th most talented roster in the Pac-12 last year. 32nd overall, 32nd most talented roster. Florida, 7th most talented roster. Utah wins their conference and makes a New Year's Six bowl. Florida 6-7 and costs a man his job. Clown Mullen. Clearly, the talent composite is not a 100% accurate indicator of how good a team's going to be. I mean, we obviously know that. You can have a really talented team and terrible quarterback play, right? And you may have a bit of a ceiling. You can have a talented roster and a terrible coach, and maybe that gives you a ceiling. So I'm not trying to say that this means Florida would have beat Utah last year. Clearly, I don't think anybody thinks that. So talent isn't all that matters, although it's a huge part of it. So Florida will have the more talented roster again this year, 2022, when the teams kick things off in week 1 in Gainesville. You hear this, hell, I say it all the time. This coach gets the most out of the talent he has available. That's Kyle Whittingham at Utah. Utah, year in and year out, is one of the most well-coached teams in all of college football, period. That includes Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, whatever, LSU, whatever teams you want to name that are just loaded with NFL talent, right? I saw an article when I was looking up some stuff about this video where they were talking to some NFL scouts, some NFL personnel that go to colleges and watch kids play and go to the combine and things like that. And they said, if there's a player at Utah that you think is good enough to play in the NFL talent-wise, when he gets to your team, he's going to be very well coached coming out of Utah. So very good reputation Whittingham and staff have at Utah of developing players and getting the absolute most out of the talent they're able to recruit, which, you can go check the recruiting rankings. Like I said, according to 24/7, they had the 32nd most talented team in all the land. Last year, their record, they play way above their skis, in other words, is what I'm saying. That 32nd most talented roster, they're winning the Pac-12, gave Ohio State all they wanted in the Rose Bowl. Great game last year. Florida, of course, on the other hand, brand new coaching staff, brand new head coach, Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier is a good coach. I know Whittingham is a good coach, but I think Napier is a good coach. Now, Florida is a different animal compared to Louisiana, Louisiana Lafayette, wherever what hell he was. Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, whatever it was. Florida's a totally different animal. A lot of politics involved in being the head coach of a prominent school in the SEC like Florida. A lot, and I mean a lot of pressure at an SEC school that you just don't have at a place in the group of 5. And you never really know how a coach is going to handle that, right? And while I will admit that the talent index is not the end-all, be-all, if you've got the 10th best team, that doesn't mean you're definitely losing to the 9th most talented team. If you've got the 5th most talented team, that doesn't mean you're definitely losing to the 4th most talented team. I get that. But it's a pretty good indicator. Go back and check the list of national champions over the last, how many years. Where were they in the talent index? Top 10. Top 10. Yeah, so talent does win. Is Napier going to be able to improve Florida's talent level overall? Because let's just be real, they're behind the 8 ball right now in terms of competing against teams like Georgia, Alabama, and even LSU, at least when it comes to recruiting. Now, some of that can be made up by coaching. Some of that can be made up by transfer portal. So it's not a shot at Florida in any way by saying that. But the reason Mullen, or one of the reasons Mullen was ran out of town on a rail, hitching a ride on the first thing smoking, towards the end of this past season, if you talk to the Florida fans, one of the main things they point at is recruiting, right? And Mullen wasn't a terrible recruiter, but I don't really think Dan Mullen and staff did anything to elevate Florida's recruiting. Florida has a floor when it comes to recruiting because it's in a talent-rich state like Florida. It's an SEC school. They've got some good tradition, at least over the last 30 years or so. It kind of recruits itself, Florida does, to a certain extent. So then what you have to do is get a coach who then can raise that. Florida's always, at least almost always, going to have a top 20 class, almost regardless of who the head coach is and how good of a recruiter he or his staff is. So what you're looking for in a head coach at Florida, when it comes to recruiting, is a head coach and a staff who can take Florida from that floor level of top 20-ish and get them into the top 10 and possibly into the top 5. Of course, one of the most difficult things about head coaching in the SEC is that you can end up with the 7th, 8th, 9th best recruiting class nationally. And in a lot of cases, that's going to put you 5th or 6th in the SEC. The SEC is just loading up lately on recruiting. But this is an interesting game, Florida against Utah. It's kind of, as far as last year goes, it was two programs headed in totally opposite directions. I mean, Florida was in crash and burn mode. Really, from the time they lost that game to LSU in the middle of the season to the rest of the season, it was kind of like just slow crash and burn. A bad loss to Georgia, the loss to South Carolina. I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse, finishing things off at the end of the year with a loss to Central Florida, group of five team in the same state. Not a good look. Not a good look at all for Florida. It's never good to lose to a group of five team. You lose to a group of five team within your own state. That has recruiting implications. So we'll see how Napier handles that. How he handles that down the road. Utah, on the other hand, had a great season. At least by Utah standards, like I mentioned, winning the Pac-12, making it to a New Year's Six Bowl. They beat Oregon twice last year, blew them out twice. And Oregon, of course, beat Ohio State last year. Now, Utah wasn't able to finish the deal and beat Ohio State themselves at the end of the season in that bowl game. But for a team like Utah to win the Pac-12 and even get really to that Rose Bowl game was a pretty big accomplishment. And not that Utah is looking for or needs participation trophies or needs me to come on here and pat them on the back. But, the reality is you look around the Pac-12 and you got teams like Southern Cal, Arizona State, Oregon, Washington, Stanford, even to a smaller degree. These are teams that in general, I think, should consistently be better than Utah. Not every single year, maybe for all of those teams, but generally speaking, over any 20-year period, any of those teams should be better than Utah. And right now, it's just not the case. Utah is really the class of the Pac-12 right now. I know Southern Cal's hot right now because of the Lincoln Riley thing, and people want to jump all over them. Look, I like Lincoln Riley. I think what he did at Oklahoma was pretty good. Yeah, his defense was terrible, and he kept hitting his head on the ceiling every time he made it into the first round of the college football playoffs. But the point is, he got to the college football playoffs a lot of times. Not very many coaches have done that. You can count on two hands the number of coaches who have ever made it to the college football playoff. So I think it's a good hire for Southern Cal, but some of the hype, I think, is out of hand for Southern Cal. I mean, let's not forget, they're coming off their worst season in 30 years. It's not like Southern Cal went 8-4 or 9-3 and they fired their coach. No, they were absolutely horrible. Horrible. Lost a quarterback. Get another one, though. Lincoln Riley bringing his boy over from Oklahoma, Caleb Williams. So, I do think, Southern Cal's going to have some talent, but, man, can we slow down the hype train a little bit on Southern Cal until we at least see them win some games? I mean, it's not like Lincoln Riley inherited a 10-win team here. And I know because of the transfer portal, you can make some immediate fixes, but you can't build a program through the transfer portal. That's for replacing holes. Southern Cal's got way too many holes, at least in my opinion, to fix in 1 year through the transfer portal. So can we back off on that a little? Oregon, brand new head coach in Dan Lanning. Oregon also playing an SEC team week when they play Georgia. I'm sure that'll be one of the videos that comes up in this series. Again, hit the thumbs up if you hadn't already, because as soon as these videos get to 375 likes, I'm going to put another one out about another game. But Utah and Florida here. So, I mean, this will be a good one. And I was only kind of half trolling at the beginning when I said I'm really looking forward to this game more next year, just because it's such a rare... I mean, seeing Florida play a road game against a Power 5 non-con opponent is like seeing it's like seeing Bigfoot riding a unicorn. It's just, you don't see it every day. So that to me, it'll be more interesting next year. Am I willing to bet? I don't know. Let's look at it. Let's talk about next year for a second. Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC at some point. We don't know when. Sometime between now and 2025. There was a lot of speculation it would be for this season, the 2022 season. That's obviously not happening. So now the can gets kicked down the road and people be speculating about 2023. If Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC in 2023, I'll tell you right now, Florida ain't playing on the road at Utah. Look, Florida's looking for any reason to cancel that game already. There's a reason they haven't played a Power 5 non-con on the road since 1990. There's a reason. It's because they don't want to do it. I don't know who pressured them into signing this thing with Utah, but somebody did. But if Texas and Oklahoma enter the SEC for the 2023 season, and the SEC says we've got to get reworked, and God forbid the SEC goes to 9 conference games, I can tell you right now, Billy Napier and the Florida Gators are not getting on no train and heading west to Salt Lake City to play Utah next year. That I can tell you.